the nature of God, when we study the people that God uses, when we study the way God interacts with people, okay, it seems to be that in my studies, God's not super interested in, making sure I've got my next cruise ship lined out to have a fantastic time on the cruise ship, or spend more time out by the pool in the backyard or spend more time in bed sleeping late, or whatever it is that we've looked at and described. That just doesn't seem to line up with what God desires and His plans for me. And we'll talk more about this later, but I want to just state this. There's nothing wrong with being comfortable and enjoying some of the things that God intended for us to enjoy, and there's nothing wrong with going on a cruise or laying out by the pool or whatever makes you comfortable. But we'll continue to look at some of these things that can become a problem if that becomes our main focus, our main pursuit, what we're all about. You'll remember last week we spent quite a bit of time right here on looking at some of the people. We didn't look at all of them, but the people that God used to make His biggest impacts were all pulled from their comfort zones. And we looked at a handful of those last week. You'll remember we read through these four. We could come up with others, and we probably will before the series is over, but we looked at these four that made huge impacts for God and His eternal kingdom. And they're all a little bit different situations, but they definitely all were pulled from comfort zones. And, we started with Joseph up there in the upper left-hand corner. And, he was pulled from a comfort zone, a very comfortable situation, for a mission that God had purposed him for, that really did not play out for a really long time, right? And I talked about how I always admired Joseph so much because God did not, that we read of, God did not have any direct conversation with him, did not send an angel to visit with him, did not talk to him through a burning bush, Joseph just simply had to trust and believe and have great faith in what God's plan was in his life. So that was very impressive. We talked about that, a particular mission that God had planned for Joseph. Upper right-hand corner, we have Moses, who God needed to use in the way of leadership. Okay? And that speaks to so many of us, maybe all of us to a degree, because I think at some point in time God does try to pull you out of your comfort zone to go be a leader for a group, possibly. And what does Moses do? He does what so many of us do. He fights it. He's reluctant about it. He makes excuses. He tries whatever he can say to God to try to get out of going and being in this leadership role that he knows will be extremely challenging, he knows will be tough by so many measures, but God pries him out of, pulls him out of that comfort zone, uses him as a leader for years. And we've talked about this too, because although we do have a few what we might refer to as younger people like Keith, and just saw Clay and Sarah walk in, a lot of people in this room might consider themselves past the midline, I start wondering, in my mind, I probably shouldn't even say this, am I in the fourth quarter yet? Am I still in the third quarter with a few timeouts or what? What is it, Dodie? What am I in? Am I in the third quarter? I have 2 timeouts left or something like that, we're all in different phases of life. Moses at this point in time, is probably where he wanted to just be on cruise control. Living off his father-in-law's land, just, out of everybody's way. It's nice and peaceful. A piece of land out here towards Briggs, and I'm just gonna cruise to, enjoy the rest of my time. And God says, "No, I've got a different idea for you." Of course, Mary is up here on the screen. This is someone that I would describe as being pried out of her comfort zone in a shocking kind of way to her. As we talked about last Sunday, not the way she had it drawn up, wouldn't you imagine? Not the way she had planned everything out. And but God needed her to accomplish maybe His most important mission ever. Okay, to go be the mother of our Savior. And then bottom right-hand corner here is Paul. And he's different when he is pried out of his comfort zone because, God has a mission for him too. But there's a little bit of a sense when we study Paul where God targets him, maybe because of some of his qualities, to basically say, your passion, your energy, your talents are pointed in the wrong direction. We need to redirect you a little bit. We're going to use you. Most people, if we'd have gone back and met Paul and that day and age and that time and knowing what we know now, man, we would have considered Paul to be a wild man that we were all fearful of and never would have thought that God would have redirected him and used him in the way that he did. Okay? Probably speaks to people that we see and encounter even today, that you might look at and go, I never would have thought God would have used that person to accomplish what all was accomplished through him. But it should speak to us in many different kinds of ways. Here's what I want to look at also. We talked maybe a little bit about this last week. Every one of these people that we've looked at thus far, they're all pulled out of their comfort zones in different kinds of ways. And really, what's most important when they experience what comes down the pipe towards them, okay, when they're hit with, and they're hit with everything, okay, they're hit with being kidnapped, sold into captivity by their brothers. Moses is hit with, I need you to go speak face to face with the most powerful man in the world. Going down the line, we've talked, I'll go back to Paul. We talked a little bit about God pries us out of our comfort zones to try to motivate us to be more than what we have drawn up, to give you a little motivation, give you a little pride, to give you a little. Do you think Paul got motivated by being blinded for a few days? Couldn't see anything? We talked last week, I told the story about, none of us have ever experienced that, waking up, being totally blind, can't see anything. It'd be terrifying. Told you a little story about a girl that I knew, but do you think Paul got motivated by that experience? Yeah. He wrote most of the New Testament for us, didn't he? The scriptures tell us that how soon he got baptized and almost immediately began to preach the gospel and never stopped till he died. Okay? So really so much about these things that come at us is about our response. And we'll talk more here in a little bit about just how we react to these difficult, uncomfortable situations that sometimes we scratch our heads and go, man, I was so comfortable. I was doing everything the way I wanted it to go. I had everything drawn up exactly the way my plans for my future. I had everything figured out. I had everything planned out for tomorrow, for next week, for next month, next year. I mean, I just want to be comfortable, God. Leave me alone, please. I just want to be, I've got my plans together. Romans 12. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. I'm going to stress the word mind there, okay? Because so much of what we're talking about is the way we think and how we receive things in our minds and perceive the things that come at us. By the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Just kind of says to me there that what's happening in this world, and sometimes the way that we see things that come at us, that we consider to be uncomfortable and problems and difficulties, really God might see as stretching us, growing us, making us better, using us for His eternal purpose, His eternal kingdom. And if we don't perceive those things right, I think we can get in a really bad mood, really grumpy mood throughout the weeks. We can complain a lot. We can gripe a lot. We can just be, those of you that are sitting by a spouse, you probably nudge them there a little bit, and you know exactly what I'm saying. If our perception of what's coming our way is not always good and right, okay? I'm talking way too much. Anybody? Go ahead.
Certain things. We're talking about response. Every one of the ones you pointed out there had great adversity
Mm-hmm.
before they were transformed. And so it's our response. God has a plan for each and every one of us. But whether we actually obtain what He has planned for us is our response to the things that He throws in our way
Yeah,
to make us grow.
I like that.
The word transformed, it's not an immediate transformation. It's kind of like a caterpillar becoming a butterfly.
Yeah.
There's a great period of time sometimes that this takes place.
She's talking a little bit about just our opportunity to respond to the adversity that God sends our way. Really, we have an opportunity to respond in a positive kind of way or a negative kind of way. And a lot of times that growth, that good response can take some time. I think a whole lot about, hopefully most of you grew up in a pretty good home. I know some of you may not have, and I'm sorry that you did not. But I think about trying to make think about your father, your dad, your biological father, trying to make him proud. Okay? I think most of us probably go, yeah, I wanted to do that. Okay? I acted a certain way because I didn't want to disappoint my dad. Okay? Times you got your rear end busted, didn't you, Keith? Because you didn't act a certain way. See, yeah, your brother more than you. Yeah, I can remember sitting right down here, kind of in the front row, back at Austin Avenue, Church of Christ in Brownwood. And I can remember that was our youth group would sit down here, and I can remember, boy, just chatting it up and having a blast with a couple of my buddies one Sunday morning until I felt my dad thump my ear, in the middle of church and grab me up and pull me and walk me back to where him and Mom were sitting. Woo, man. That was embarrassing. Okay? But you know, a lot of us grew up not wanting to disappoint our dads, you know, wanting to strive to accomplish because of the standard that maybe your dad set. And I think a lot of the time about these things that come our way and how we have an opportunity to respond. And I think about one of these days when we stand in front, you know, you have a chance to stand in front of your Creator, and he asks you. He goes, "Man, I gave that to you because I wanted to grow you. I wanted to make you better. I wanted to challenge you and grow you. Why did you turn that down? Why did you quit? Why did you make excuses? Why did you fill in the blank?" And I don't know. I know God's grace will cover us all. I know Jesus' blood will make us white as snow. But there's a piece of me that wants to stand in front of my Creator and say, "Yep, I stood in there. I was willing to grow. I was willing to stretch. I was willing to be uncomfortable. I was willing to accept the challenge that you sent my way because you knew it would make me better. You knew it would grow me." I hope that makes sense to you.
It does. I have a comment. I lost a job that I was planning on retiring at,
Okay?
and it turned my world upside down, and it took me a long time to accept it.
Mm-hmm. She's talking about losing a job that you thought you would retire at.
Yeah,
Okay?
but when I did accept it,
Mhm.
I realized that it was God's will, that I needed to be somewhere else
Uh-huh.
and to do something else.
Sometimes it takes time, doesn't it?
It does.
Most of these things do take
And it,
a lot of time.
I mean, it made me a much better person.
Mm-hmm. Takes time sometimes to know, why did God send this my way?
Yeah.
You know, why did God send this down my path?
Can't be right.
Yeah, surely God's wrong. I had this drawn up a different way. Isn't that interesting? How we think our plans and the way we had things drawn up were a lot better than the way God has them drawn up. Isaiah 55:8. This is just a verse that pops into my mind, made me think. You know, God says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts. My ways are not your ways." Which really challenges me. Hopefully it would challenge you to try to see things that come our direction every day, every week, every month, a little bit different, from a different perspective, because God thinks differently than we do. We chase comfort. God's not interested in our comfort so much, okay? Just in pleasure, yeah. Which leads us into just a few statements here we'll look at. God uses ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Okay? And I could probably add to that flawed people. Okay? Imperfect people, because we all are. And so when I think of, you know, Joseph, when I think of Moses, when I think of Paul, you realize that when you sit around and you want to make excuses, you want to, not me. I don't speak too well in front of people. That really challenged me. Not me. I don't have that kind of leadership skills and knowledge. Not me, God. Surely not me. He majors in using ordinary, flawed, imperfect people. You think about it, that's all he has to work with, really. I look around at all you people out here. You're all flawed. I look around at all of us, right? We're all flawed, imperfect, ordinary people. That's all God has to work with. Okay? So when you want God to, hey, ask somebody else to do that, God. Ask somebody else to help you out in that regard. I'm not the person. You are the person. You're the only people he has to work with. And He's going to stretch you. He's going to try to grow you. Oh, man. Clicked off my... Next one here. Another statement. Important for us to understand and think about. God really isn't interested, doesn't want your comfort to increase. Believe it or not. Man, it sounds brutal, doesn't it? He wants you to grow. I think He wants you to grow. He's interested in your growth until the moment that those people that love you put your body into the ground. Okay? I'll say it that way. He wants you to grow. He's not interested in your increasing your comfort. I know it's maybe a statement you don't want to hear. He's not interested in how many more cruises you can take this year, how many more rounds of golf you can get to go play on the golf course, nicest golf courses in the state of the nation, or how many more hours you can stay in bed each morning and just ease into the morning and have that nice latte and blanket over you and all. And again, none of those things are bad in and of themselves. Okay? Don't get me wrong. Those are great to enjoy. But He's not interested in that. He's interested in growing you. He's interested in growing your character, making you better for His eternal kingdom. And then I'll say this one. You might disagree. Your willingness to leave your comfort zone is directly related to your potential to impact others for God's eternal kingdom. From the SKJ version of, that's Stephen Kirk Jones. That's just my opinion up there. That's all that is. Okay. I really do believe that. I think your willingness to leave your comfort zone, to get out of maybe where you've been, where you are, what your intentions were for the next month, for the next week. It's all related. It's all related to your potential to impact. Okay? It's difficult too, because some of these things, when we talk about being pried out of your comfort zone, I think about like Paul. Okay, let's go back to Paul. And really, he was, God saw his potential. God knew the tools that he had to be able to impact his eternal kingdom. But we said they were just kind of pointed in the wrong direction. What did that take for Paul to recognize that? Of course, we said he was blinded. That motivated him. But I feel like there was a piece in there. There was a piece to Paul's transformation. Think about this. That required Paul to say, I was wrong. I can be better. I can do better. Okay? That's a tough thing for us to do when we're put in uncomfortable situations and moments. Sometimes God's prying you out of your comfort zone because you're wrong. You're heading down the wrong path. You're a little too comfortable in your potential. You're not fulfilling the potential that you have to be able to impact God's eternal kingdom. Say that again.
Humble yourself to the
Yeah, humble yourself in the sight of the Lord, right? He'll lift you up. Being too comfortable. Here's some things that I've noted that being too comfortable, chasing comfort too much, why it can be bad. Okay, don't get too comfortable. Number one, you can become unmotivated. You can become just reluctant to be used in any sort of way. You're unmotivated. You're complacent. There's no thought of how can I help, how can I serve, how can I impact. Okay. Number two, I become just totally unavailable. If I'm going to be a servant, if I'm going to encourage, help, love, serve others, I have to be available, right? I have to be available. And if I'm too comfortable, then I'm unavailable. That's the easiest way I can put it. I don't know that we can find anyone in the Bible that we can read of that made significant impact who just said, you know what, God, find someone else. Find someone else. I'm unavailable. This is inconvenient for me. It's not good. If I'm too comfortable, I'm unwilling to grow and to get better. Okay? This goes back to, can't remember if it was last week or the week before, where I kind of made the analogy of just being a coach and working with guys out on the football field. And here's the deal about coaches. We hear it a lot from moms and dads that believe otherwise, but really, we love every single one of our kids. I've never seen a coach that just didn't, even the ones that are rough around the edges. I mean, big time rough around the edges. You love them. You usually identify that as rough around the edges, okay? But really all you want as a coach, is no matter what level that kiddo is on, okay? I'm looking over here to Eddie that coached with me a little bit. Offensive line coach, he'll be able to identify with this. Is that no matter what level they are on, they're willing to grow and try to get better. Okay? That's the way it is with every kid that I've ever seen, that I've ever heard coaches talk about, and I've been in that locker room, that coach's office on Saturdays and Sundays when there are no parents around, there's nobody around. We talk about every single kid. Even though parents call and go, y'all have it out for my kid, y'all don't like my kid. That's not true. We love them, okay? We just want them to try and to pursue getting better, to try to be the best that they can be. I really feel like it's the exact same way with our Heavenly Father. When He looks at every single, when He looks at Bobby, when He looks at Barney, when He looks at Clay, when He looks at Dodie, when He looks at Kelvin, when He looks at Keith, I think that's what He's interested in, is growing you and wanting to see your effort to try to grow and get better and be better, okay? Don't get too comfortable, because I think that comfort and feeling like, man, I've got it all figured out, this is just easy street that I'm living on, really makes you less reliant on Him in your faith, okay? Faith it's a hard thing when we see these tough things come our way each week. When we see challenging things that enter our lives, things that we would never maybe recognize as being sent by God. I don't know for sure. Cancer, maybe. But maybe some of you have dealt with that, are dealing with that, have loved ones that have dealt with that. That's just something that popped into my mind. Okay? Boy, that sure doesn't seem like God would allow that to try to grow me and make some sort of good out of this. How could that ever come from something that bad? Okay?
I've seen that bring non-believers
Okay, she said she's seen it bring non-believers to God. There would be a reason. That would be a reason that we might never perceive something like cancer as being something good that God could use to grow you. And a very uncomfortable thing. Nobody likes to talk about that word. Nobody likes to hear that word, say that word, think that word might enter your life when you go to the doctor or a loved one goes to the doctor. Man, it's terrible. It goes back to our mind, the way we perceive things. But it's a way God could use it. Dodie was wanting to say something.
I've always been such a strong believer in our example
Uh-huh.
of our lives, and I think that's
Yeah.
And on the
I agree
flip
with
side,
that.
though, along with that, what you're talking about there, what if everybody, you know, you said, we're unmotivated, we're unavailable, we're unwilling to grow, we're less reliant on faith. What if we all were that way?
Mm-hmm.
Who would the church be?
Yeah.
And so as I made decisions in my life, I would think, what if everybody did that? I need to step up.
You bet.
Somebody's got to step up.
What if no one were available?
I might not be comfortable at
Mm-hmm.
all.
I
And
agree.
I'm sure I probably said some things and done some things that I didn't need to, but the most important thing is we've got to have a group for the church to grow, for God's word to be
Mhm.
taught, and so that's really important. It's what motivated me.
Good stuff. Good stuff. And we'll probably come back to that, whether we get to it today or next week. But I agree. Yes, ma'am. Okay, we'll come here next. We'll come here next. We'll go on right here.
With what you said, if all of this exists, Satan wins. It's that
Mhm.
simple.
You bet. Because I think Satan wants us to perceive these uncomfortable things that come our way. He wants us to perceive it in a negative light. He wants us to complain. He wants us to bellyache about the things that are coming towards us. It goes back to our response. Yes, ma'am.
So if these are deliberate choices, can they really call themselves Christians? These are the antithesis of what God's book says to do to be a Christian. Now, if this were unconscious behaviors, then are you still a Christian? Because if you're not willing to learn, you're not willing to read your Bible, you're not willing to do God's will deliberately or unconsciously, are you a Christian?
Thank goodness for grace, Steve.
Yeah, that's a tough question. Absolutely, I think you're still Christian. I think it's the thing that all of us it's the daily, maybe hourly, daily, weekly battle that we face is understanding that God's nature is not what we sometimes believe that maybe it is. God is all about my comfort and my next, comfortable moment, and it's really not the nature of God. Tiffany.
A word you said earlier, and I've been thinking about, I think it applies really to a lot of our daily decisions and responses we make is convenience. Our whole society wants convenience with everything, and there's a lot of times we have to be inconvenienced.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not the most convenient thing to get up and get your kids to church and get them to Bible class. It's not the most convenient to help people when you're busy, or but you have to not be so comfortable that you're willing to just say, well, this
Yeah.
isn't a good time for me.
100% agree. And it's we started out, you remember a couple of weeks ago, and just talked about, and it's not going to stop. Our world is always going to be about the next most convenient, easy invention. Okay? From 80 years ago, we didn't send mail to people by email where they got it immediately. Okay? That was designed out of convenience. Now, most of us would probably look at it and go, that's really inconvenient nowadays because I get information way too fast. But the cars that are designed nowadays, and the safety features, and the heated seats, and the refrigerators, and my smart TVs, and my smart watch, and all that it's all designed for more convenient, simpler life. Make your life easier. But what Tiffany's talking about is it's not real convenient for me I shouldn't say me, I should say my wife, because she's the one that does it. When someone passes away, to cook a meal and take it to somebody's house and say, there, you know, we love you, want to do this for you. That's not convenient. That's not easy. It's not simple. It goes against the nature of where everything in our world tries to move and making things simpler or easier. Service, loving others, helping others, encouraging others requires us to get out of our comfort zones. Okay? Back to faith, being less reliant on faith in Him. You know, it just speaks to, in these uncomfortable moments when things come our way that we didn't expect, we didn't draw up. This wasn't the way I planned it. There's this constant battle in us between faith. I want to really have faith and trust, but I really want to have control. You know, this really wasn't the way I drew it up. I really would like to have some control here. Okay? That's a constant battle that is so tough to just have faith and trust, and even if it wasn't the way we drew it up, knowing that God's going to work to make things right for His eternal purpose, His eternal kingdom. Yes, sir. We're almost out of time. We're talk fast. Mm-hmm.
We start out with the cradle roll, and then 2 and 5, 5-year-old kids, and nobody wanted to teach. So we said, I tell you what we'll do is we'll just let everybody all over the auditorium. Okay, now what's the next one? Well, somebody right quick said, get out of the comfort zone. They didn't want those kids.
Yeah. Yeah, God has a lot of different ways to pry us out of our comfort zones. And I'll finish with this, and we certainly didn't make it as far down the road as I wanted to. This series is turning into a 12-week series instead of a 6-week series. So, but it's interesting because, you know, I'll make that statement. God has a lot of different ways to pry you out of your comfort zone. And if you sell Him short on that, just think about that. If you don't think that He can, if you don't think that He can get you out of your comfort zone, you know, think again. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for being here.